Very proud to be continuing the journey with this video sponsor, Squarespace. They just re-signed for the 6th year running, making them our longest and most supportive partner. They help me do what I do, just like their website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more. A quick disclaimer before we start, I had an issue with my recording, and so the footage here looks a little choppier than it actually is in-game. I fixed that issue for the future, but for now just know that the in-game experience is notably smoother than you'll see in this video. Hello and welcome to 2025. Gonna be a good year for video games, I think, and I can think of no better way to kick it off than a preview for Come Deliverance II, one of the biggest and most ambitious RPGs launching this year. And just to give you a sense of how big this is, Warhorse sent out the review code for this one in the first week of January, giving us a full month to play it ahead of the review embargo. They then said that we could do a preview of the game, but we could only show up to a certain point, and they said it would take us around 10 hours to reach that point. Well, I'm at over 20 hours played now, and I still have not reached that point, because Come Deliverance II, or KCD2, is so vast and dense and distracting in that every time you have a specific goal or destination in mind, you'll invariably get waylaid or sidetracked en route to it. Going directly from point A to point B is basically impossible in this game because there's always going to be 5 new things you discover along the way, each one beckoning you toward it without the promise of XP or gear or whatever. It's just your curiosity that spurs you forward, and that curiosity is always handsomely rewarded. So let's just frame up this preview. I have played around 20 hours and I've basically been doing every single bit of side content you can do, which is why it's taken me 20 hours to play a 10-hour stretch of game. This preview is spoiler free in that I do talk about some of the setup for the scenarios I encounter, but never their resolutions. I played from the very start of the game, and at this point the broader plot is kind of on hold while I just cruise around the countryside, exploring, gearing up, helping people out, etc. I played on a high-end PC and a Steam Deck, and I will be doing a full review of the game at or near embargo. So at a very high level, I want to make clear that KCD2 is absolutely more KCD, and if you didn't like the first game, I think it's extremely unlikely that you will enjoy this. KCD was very popular and critically acclaimed, but it was also a very acquired taste. It had a pace that many found too slow. Its commitment to history could feel a little dull to those who were looking for a little more spectacle. Its game systems were very tactile, which could feel laborious to those who didn't delight in the doing of them, and in particular, combat was, man, it was like a whole thing. It put a premium on authenticity over playability, which really fit KCD and what it was trying to do, but it does result in a combat system that demands you meet it on its terms, and if you are unwilling to do that, then you probably weren't going to have a great time with KCD. KCD 2 is that sort of sequel that confidently says, I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be for those who love me. Everybody else can take a hike. Even with just 20 hours in the game, it's already clear that the budget, scale, ambition, and depth of KCD 2 far exceeds that of the original game, but the heart of it remains wholly unchanged. This is a deeply immersive, slow-paced, systems-driven, mechanics-heavy, historically accurate role-playing experience. In the most deliberate use of the words role-playing, this is about becoming Henry, experiencing the world through his eyes, staring down dangers with those same eyes, bare-knuckle brawling at a tavern, and then donning a pair of gloves when it's time to do some blacksmithing to earn enough coin to pay for a bath because by God you stink. In an era where most games put a premium on convenience and instant gratification, KCD is the exact opposite of that. It is so slow that it can feel self-indulgent. And here in the sequel, rather than try to smooth out some of that to make it more accessible to a wider audience, Warhorse Studios have essentially doubled down on all of the things that gave KCD its identity. The result is a game that so far delivers an elevated experience for those that are into that sort of thing, but also one that remains utterly impenetrable to those who seek more convenience, a faster pace, and more spectacle than what this setting and time period allow for. Cards on the table though, I fucking love this, but I love the first game, so I'm kind of an easy mark. 20 hours in, KCD2 is everything I hoped it would be and more, and if all of that holds through to the conclusion, I think we're in for yet another sprawling, magnificent, wholly unique RPG experience.
Well, Henry, looking forward to new adventures? Adventures that will become the stuff of legends?
From the moment the first cutscene rolled in KCD2, I was like, whoa, you guys had a lot more money this time, didn't you? Presentation of KCD1 was no slouch, but it did have some rougher edges, and it's also 6 years old now. Here, these in-engine but pre-rendered cutscenes are just the first taste of the visual uplift that KC2 delivers, because as impressive as they are, it's far more impressive when the pre-rendering stops and the gameplay kicks in. This is just a crazy good-looking game with some of the best landscapes and vegetation in any game, full stop. A lot of my 20 hours has been walking through or riding through the countryside, and Warhorse have put an extraordinary amount of effort into making that countryside look remarkable. When you finally get a horse and you push out from a tree line into a rolling field and you dig those spurs in and the horse breaks into a gallop, it's almost like you can feel the sun on your face and the wind in your hair. It's a combination of the design of these landscapes, the way they're colored and lit, how densely detailed they are, and how endlessly they stretch out before you. It's some of the most beautiful nature you'll find in any game, and it makes your lengthy commutes very pleasant because even when there's not much going on, there's plenty of lovely scenery to look at. It also runs brilliantly, at least on my high-end machine, 4K resolution, all settings maxed out, DLSS set to performance. I was constantly getting over 80 frames a second in wide open areas and around 100 frames or more in enclosed spaces. I also tested it on Steam Deck, and it's pretty impressive how well it runs. With FSR set to balance, you can get a locked 45 frames when playing on low settings and a locked 30 frames when playing on medium settings. I personally think this sort of game is best enjoyed on a large monitor or a TV screen, but like they say, you gotta dance with the one what brung ya, and if the Steam Deck is your only option, then you can rest easy knowing that you can expect a smooth experience. Bugs was an area that really crippled KCD1 at launch, to the point where I and many others didn't actually end up recommending it at launch, suggesting that people wait for bug fixes to roll through before picking it up. That was really understandable back then because KCD was a Kickstarter project from an all-new studio, which capped out at about 150 people, and they worked on the game for 8 years before just having to ship it. This time, it is very different. The team is almost twice as large, and rather than building from scratch, they have a huge head start in the form of the first game. The result is a substantially less buggy game that I think will pass most sniff tests. However, it hasn't been totally smooth sailing for me. In my 20 hours, there have been 3 occasions where quests have bugged out, forcing me to reload saves. In one instance, I didn't even know the quest bugged out because it wasn't clearly communicated, and I only realized that about an hour later, which then forced me to reload a save, having, wasted that full hour. In another instance, I experienced a hard crash after spending 30 minutes just blacksmithing and repairing gear and tidying up my inventory and spending perk points, etc. The way this loss of progress occurs is actually tied to the way the game handles saving. So in the first game, there were regular autosaves, but you could only manually save if you slept in a bed or you drank schnapps, which you could either find or craft. The system was designed to avoid save scumming, and it would force you to more carefully consider actions, which is all good in theory, but when playing a buggy game, it did result in huge amounts of lost progress when the game did something it wasn't supposed to do and you were forced to reload a save. Here in KCD2, the save system is similar, only now there's a save and quit option in the menu, which allows you to save whenever you like, but you need to close the game client to do so. So at this point, Warhorse has landed on what I think is a pretty silly solution, because now, when I'm about to do something important, and it's been a while since I've found a bed to sleep in or whatever, I just close the game client and reopen it. So I have to sit through the loading screens needlessly, all because Warhorse thought that this weird compromise would be better than just letting me manually save. Anyway, the point of all of this is to say that the game is way less buggy than KCD1 was at launch, but it's not perfect, and it wouldn't be a big deal if the save system was more flexible, and it isn't a big deal so long as you're willing to regularly close the client to save the game, which is a ridiculous sentence to have to say out loud, but it is what it is. The opening of the game is, I think, extremely strong. Henry and his lord, Hans Capon, have been dispatched to deliver a message to a distant noble, a sort of peace offering on which much hinges. Rather unexpectedly, Henry and his band are attacked by marauding bandits, and while Henry and Hans manage to escape, the rest of their party does not. Henry is grievously wounded and stripped of all of his possessions, which creates a sort of Metroidvania reset moment here for Henry. All of the physical strength and equipment he'd amassed over the previous game is now gone, and he needs to begin rebuilding his body, his arsenal, and his wealth in a new section of the world that is totally unfamiliar to him. Resetting the table like this is really good because there's a tremendous amount of joy to be found in engaging all of KCD's very tactile itemization, progression, and economic systems. I mean, gear-wise, it's an incredibly deep and sophisticated offering. I don't think I've ever seen a character sheet that's let me equip so many things at once, and they're all real things, mind you, because you need to put on certain types of armor on top of specific underlays or paddings. There's coats and cuirasses and breastplates and coifs and padded leggings, and the list goes on, and you're naked as the day you were born when you start this journey, but as you explore you might find a sick sword laying on a corpse of a fallen knight out in the forest, or you might best a group of bandits who ambush you at night, allowing you to take all their gear. Bit by bit you gear up, and now 20 hours in, I've got almost all my item slots filled, and I'm starting to feel pretty robust in combat. But it's not just about armor, mind you, it's also about the other clothes you wear and what they do, and what condition those clothes are in. If you're in town wearing full armor, covered head to toe in blood, and you haven't bathed in days, the local landed gentry aren't going to be obliged to treat with you. Similarly, if you're standing there wearing nothing but your cotton socks, ruffians assailing you in the dead of night are unlikely to be moved by your threats of violence. You need to wear the right clothes for the right situation, as your attire and presentation will greatly impact your effectiveness in dialogue checks, and I personally have encountered more than a few situations where people were much more helpful after I'd slipped away for a moment to freshen up and put on a change of clothes, a process made much simpler by the inclusion of a loadout system that allows you to instantly swap between 3 clothing configurations. The clothing system is really emblematic of what you can expect from most of KCD2's game systems. Progression and perks is another example. Like all the best RPGs, you level up specific skills by doing that thing, and there are so many different categories of action. There's crafting and hunting and warfare and speechcraft and stealthing and dozens of others, and then above all of those are your core stats, things like strength and vitality and agility, etc. Hell, there's even a dedicated drinking stat with a whole raft of perks underneath it that can make you a better and or more discerning drinker. A skill set that would have been very useful to me when I spent a night getting absolutely shit-faced with a bunch of cumins, to the point where I got naked and said I could swim across the pond, even though Henry can't swim. God bless him. The space to shape your character here is so vast, you really can roleplay as a drunken brawler who starts shit in every tavern, or you can be a ranger type hunting and living off the land, or you might be that smooth-talking charlatan, no noble blood but still able to verbally joust with the highborn when the situation calls for it. It's so flexible and so feelable. When you've got this many different stats and systems at work, there's a risk that all of this just tumbles into this big melting pot and it's impossible to keep track of it all. But your gear and your perks are so potent that you feel how much they shape both your capabilities and your decisions, and that is one of the most important aspects of any RPG experience, and KCD1 nailed that, and KCD2 is taking it leagues further. Decision making is obviously also a huge part of the game's various narratives too. There is a main quest line, but I can't comment about how much decisions matter there since I haven't experienced much of it. On the side quests though, it's hugely important. I've probably completed around a dozen side quests at this point, and almost all of them have had multiple meaningful dialogue options that could pivot the outcome of a quest one way or another. Often these decisions are small, like whether you agree to collect wildflowers for someone who's trying to brew a potion, but just as often they're life or death decisions as you find yourself the arbiter of someone's fate. More profoundly, there's a huge amount of decision making baked into the core gameplay, such that you're almost never not making a decision. There's so much freedom about where to go at any point in time, and so much to discover when you get there. New towns, for example, when you arrive, the map does not get filled out until you do a lap of the town, seeing for yourself where the butcher is, where the tailor is, talking to the local innkeep about local goings-on and gossip. They may alert you to the threat of bandits roaming the area, and if you want to go and confront them, maybe you do that from afar, sniping them with your bow. Maybe you want to do a full frontal assault, murdering a few of them in their sleep while only confronting the poor sap who was on guard duty that night. All of these options and freedoms are yours for the taking at any given moment, and KCD2 certainly isn't the first game to frame things up like this, but it's among the most capable in its rendition of this fantasy. Warhorse have poured so much love and care into each game system that none of them falter as you begin to lean on them. They all withstand whatever level of scrutiny you want to throw at them, but similarly, none of them become so powerful and so effective that they're like an I win button. 20 hours in, the game feels really well balanced, inviting you to be inventive and adaptive with how you approach situations, because while you may have your own preferred fantasy or playstyle, there's obviously going to be better or easier ways to do specific things, and so dipping your toes into those different playstyles, those different weapon types, those different dialogue options, they give you a taste of a new way to play KCD2, one that just might become your preferred way to play for the rest of the game. The last thing I'll touch on is the earnestness with which Warhorse approached this character Henry, the people around him, the scrapes he gets into, and the region Warhorse are depicting here. There's no other game quite like KCD. Typically, a role-playing experience like this is set in a fantasy world, Baldur's Gate, Skyrim, Avowed, The Witcher, etc. These are all very similar games to KCD in many aspects, but their fantasy settings allow the writers to imagine almost anything they please. Game feeling a little slow-paced? Just throw in an epic dragon battle. Quests getting a little dull? Make the final boss an immortal troll woman who harvests the youth of unborn children to stay alive. That'll fix it. KCD can't do any of that. It has to color within the lines of what is believable, and moreover, it's further constrained by a deep commitment to accurately depicting the history of these people and this region. Now, this is obviously not a one-to-one depiction because it's a video game and you've got to take some creative license, but where Warhorse can be authentic, they will be. These constraints are naturally going to result in a less audacious, less spectacular adventure. Real life is, generally speaking, not as fun as magic and dragons, so I think it would have been very tempting for Warhorse to reach for scenarios and set pieces that are more exciting, give the whole thing a bit of a swashbuckling Three Musketeers kind of vibe. But Warhorse actually went the exact opposite direction, and they've centered their game on very intimate personal dramas, disagreements between merchants, bitter family feuds, a storyline about the funding of a wedding celebration, a lover's quarrel, a search for a woodsman who got drunk and wandered off, a search for your own dog who went missing when you were attacked. There's obviously going to be a bigger saga waiting for me later on, one of kings and courts and trebuchets, but for 20 hours I really have been getting to know the local herb woman and helping her out with like 8 things, and I really did spend nearly 20 hours looking for that damn dog. In that time, I've met so many wonderfully written, memorable characters who all had a small part to play in my larger story, and I really delighted in how small so many of the stakes were here, and I appreciated how subtle so many of the character depictions were. Warhorse have built a world here comprised of villages, and those villages are comprised of people, each with their own personalities and stories, such that when I look at the map, I actually don't see buildings, I see people. The person who I know can help me with this thing because I helped them with that other thing before. For a game of such breathtaking beauty, massive scale, and impressive mechanical depth, I think it's to Warhorse's credit that these intimate character moments can leave such a lasting impression. I love fighting a 1,000-year-old bone dragon in Baldur's Gate 3, but I also love playing matchmaker between a wandering nomad woman and a burly human, only to fail so badly that the woman cusses me out and the man knocks me on my ass. Those are good times, and I can't wait to keep having them as I play through the rest of the game. I'm going to go do that right now, so please, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop it a like, and do look forward to the full review in a few weeks' time. Thanks very much, see you then. First video of the year, and it feels only right to be sponsored by this video's longest running and most supportive partner, Squarespace. You might have missed it, but in December of last year, Squarespace signed on for a 6th consecutive year supporting this channel, helping the Skill Up team do what we do. Squarespace was the very first longtime sponsor I ever secured, and they've been with me ever since. Their support gave me the confidence to go full-time on YouTube back in the day, so it's very little exaggeration to say that I probably wouldn't even be here without them. Squarespace are helping me live my dream career, and to be honest, that's kind of their business, because their website creation tools make it super easy for anyone to spin up a new business, scale up an existing business, develop a portfolio of work, or just build community. The days of having to hire an expensive team of web developers to make your website are over. With Squarespace, you can build a professional looking website in minutes. Just start by selecting one of their templates, customize it using their intuitive tools, and then begin uploading your content, be it published articles, the inventory of stuff you're selling, your art portfolio, whatever. Squarespace websites all support e-commerce, making it easy to begin doing business on your site, either by selling product or by organizing appointments if you're providing a service. They support multiple payment solutions as well as detailed analytics so you can see how your customers are finding you and what they're doing when they spend time on your site. Recently, Squarespace just took things to a whole new level. Their all-new design intelligence framework leverages their 2 decades of experience in website creation to give you even more tools to shape the website of your dreams, helping you with writing copy, product descriptions, or mailouts. There's so much more that Squarespace offers, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can visit squarespace.com to try it for free. And if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup for 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. A big thanks to Squarespace for their 6 years of support, and a big thanks to you for watching this video.